Hello and good morning to the latest MEED webinar. This week, we'll be looking at the Saudi Arabia projects market and the latest developments in the largest projects market in the MENA region and one of the biggest and most active globally right now. My name is Edward James. I'm the head of content and research at MEED, and I'll be giving a 40-minute presentation or so on the Saudi Arabia projects market, which will be followed as ever by a Q&A session where you have the opportunity to enter questions into the Q&A box on your Zoom menu, and I'll attempt to answer them afterwards. So thank you very much for joining. The presentation itself, as ever, is being recorded and will be uploaded onto YouTube within a couple of days, so you'll be able to watch it again in your own time. And for those of you who have registered, and there have been more than 2,500 people registered, which really demonstrates the popularity of this or importance of this projects market. You'll also be emailed the presentation itself again to share it or to look at it in your own time. Right, let's go. So just for those of you who may not know what MEED does, MEED is a business intelligence company focused on the Middle East and North Africa. We have two principal products, MEED.com, which is our news, features and analysis service. And then we have MEED Projects, which is our projects tracking database. And most of the data that you'll see in this presentation is sourced from both of those two platforms. So if you haven't already or are not familiar with them, please check them out on the internet and you'll learn more about them. Okay. Now, this presentation and webinar is being done at the same time in parallel to the launch of our latest Premium Intelligence report, which is the Saudi Arabia Projects Market 2025 report. This covers all of the information and data that you see today, along with a lot more detailed and granular data and information on the Saudi Arabia projects market. It's several hundred pages long. And if you're interested in learning everything you can about the market, then you can purchase it from us. You have on the top left corner, you can see there is a discount code. You can apply that code for $600 discount, which is valid until the 3rd of September. And on the bottom right-hand corner, you can see there's a QR code as well. Just take your cameras out, take a photo of that, and that will lead you to the store page where you can also see the table of contents, get some sample pages and a better idea about what it covers. Also, just want to highlight while we're all here together, our Saudi Giga Projects 2026 conference next year in June in Riyadh. I know it seems a long way out, but many companies are preparing their schedules and participation in this already. It's our Blue Ribbon event. It's a huge event. Last year it was hosted at the Russian Front in Riyadh, hosted alongside Russian Giga Project. If you are interested in attending or participating as a sponsor or in any other commercial way, then again, please scan this QR code and register your interest. It's going to be bigger and better next year, and it will include various workshops and one-to-one meetings, arranged networking, and so on. So for an idea about the program and more details about the event, please scan this QR code. All right, on to the presentation itself. As I mentioned, it will take about 40 minutes. It's being recorded, it'll be uploaded, so you'll have a chance to watch it again in your own time. And it's also going to be emailed to you all as well, again, so you'll be able to have a copy of it and also share with whoever you think would enjoy it. Right, so let's take a look at the latest data as it stands in late August on the projects market in the GCC, just to set the scene and the context and to see how the market has performed this year. So as of a couple of days ago, the value of contracts awarded in the GCC this year was $125 billion, $126 billion. Now, you can see that compared with full year numbers for previous years. and particularly with in relation to the record performance in 2023 and 2024. Last year, we saw almost $300 billion worth of contracts awarded in the region. So on a pro rata basis, looking at the $126 billion awarded this year, we can see that we are nowhere close to matching last year's numbers. And even with taking into account there are still 4 months left to go, we are unlikely to reach much more than the previous 10-year average. So disappointing compared with the previous years, it has to be said. I don't think anyone can argue with that. And we'll look at this throughout the course of this webinar, why that is. A lot of it is to do with Saudi Arabia, although as we'll see now, there are falls in other markets as well. So here we can see the same data split down by each of the 6 GCC states. And you can see that the fall is most apparent or most obvious in the Saudi Arabia market. So in the first 8 months of the year, we've seen about $51 billion worth of contracts awarded, compared with $155 billion last year, and about $120 billion the previous years. So we're only at a third of the 2024 number. And so it's pretty obvious that even though we've got 4 months to go, we're not going to be anywhere near last year's number. And we've seen and read a lot of news, features and analysis, a lot of it, of course, from MEED, on the Saudi slowdown. And I guess this really demonstrates that. And we'll look into the reasons for that over the course of this presentation. Other markets, as you can see, also down. Qatar is going to be quite a bit down on last year's performance, as is on a pro rata basis Oman, and also the UAE, it seems. However, as you'll see here, UAE is now returned to being the largest projects market in the GCC in terms of the performance this year, and compared to last year's figures, is going to perform fairly well. And in fact, actually, if you look at both Saudi and the UAE, yes, the numbers are down on 2023 and 24. However, if you look at them, compare them with the 2014 to 2022 numbers for the whole year, then actually they are higher. And it may be unfair to compare them to what has been a record 2 years of project spending and activity in the market. Okay, now we're going to look more closely for the rest of the presentation on Saudi Arabia. And here we are taking the previous number, the $151 billion awarded this year to date, and the previous few years, and we're going to look at the performance by sector. And as you'll see here, every sector is down. It's not just giga project spending and the construction market. We can see here that almost every sector has been impacted. Last year, we saw a surge in power project spending, and that was, saw it reach a record number, and indeed being the largest market last year. And it's actually the largest market this year to date, $15 billion, followed by construction, which is normally the largest market and sector in the region and in each country, with about $12.7 billion. And then we see $8 billion in water, 5 in transport, and so on. And yes, again, the numbers are well down on last year's figures and 2023 figures. But if you compare them with previous years before that, then actually they're not doing too badly. And it's also, of course, important to bear in mind we've still got 4 more months of the year to go. So these numbers will rise, and there could be some very large projects which will impact them. But nonetheless, we are still a far cry away from 2023 and 2024 numbers. So it is quite apparent that the market on face of it and from a data perspective is performing badly compared with 2024. We can see that also when we look at Saudi Arabia by region. You can see that there was obviously an increase in spending in 23 and 24. And this year, unsurprisingly, based on the previous data on the slides we've seen, each region has fallen. There's not been any one particular region that's outperformed others. We can still see that Riyadh remains the largest segment or area for project contract awards, followed by the Eastern Province, of course, and oil and gas spending, and then the Medina and Jeddah area. Right, a lot of talk, of course, something that we've discussed at length on a number of webinars and articles and features at MEED over the last year or so, is the downturn in the spending on the giga projects, which is demonstrated here and underlined here on this slide. We know that around Q2 last year, there was some pause in spending on the giga projects, and that was reflected by this fall compared with 2023 numbers. We saw last year numbers just $24 billion after rising the previous 5 years each year. And this year, this has just accelerated and it's become more obvious. Just $6.5 billion worth of work awarded on the giga projects to date this year, primarily on Diriyah and Roshan, and spending on NEOM, the Red Sea, and other giga projects has been quite muted for different reasons. To be fair, for something like the project like the Red Sea, it's completed its first phase, and it's preparing for its second phase. So you wouldn't expect spending to be that high. Qiddiya is also well on the way to delivering its entertainment city in line for launch soon. But of course, it's NEOM where a lot of the problems are most obvious. So we've seen a big fall in giga project spending and a big fall overall in the projects market in Saudi Arabia this year compared to the previous 2 years. But as we have also seen, it's not just the giga projects. Yes, there's been a big fall there, but it's a fall seen across all sectors. So why is that? Why has the market underperformed this year? Well, there's a number of reasons, some of them related, some of them not. Of course, something that we've read quite extensively is the very substantial cost inflation and engineering challenges on some of these iconic, very complex giga projects. The line, of course, at NEOM is one such example, and with a huge cost and doubts now, an evaluation ongoing about its cost benefit ratio. There has been a re-evaluation of some of these very large iconic projects, particularly the line, and that's resulted in a big slowdown in activity. Of course, once this evaluation or prioritization has been made, we may see a resumption in project spending there. I think it's also true to say that there's been lower foreign investment or even local private sector investment in the giga projects program. A lot of it was predicated on investment by the private sector in the giga projects. This really hasn't materialized, unfortunately. There's one major exception, which is the green hydrogen project in NEOM, with Air Products and the US leading the way. But in other areas, we haven't seen that big investment materialize. And that's also caused, that was going to be a source of spending and investment in the giga projects, but that unfortunately hasn't really come to pass. Of course, we've got slightly lower oil prices, which has squeezed government budgets and the ability to spend on new capital projects. So expenditure levels have dropped on the back of lower revenues. This is, we're still in a region and markets which are greatly still dependent on oil revenues. And so with many projects effectively financed by the state, lower oil revenues equal lower project expenditure, as we've seen time and time again historically. We're now seeing a focus on the event-driven priority projects, which we'll talk about in a bit, of which we can count the World Cup stadiums, the infrastructure for the Asian Football Championship in 2029, and of course, Riyadh World Expo 2030. Now, we've also seen that spending in oil and gas has also been lower this year. A lot of that is really around the fact that Aramco awarded a record amount of oil and gas projects last 2 years and is reaching the end of this current investment cycle. Yes, there are still a large number of big projects to come this year and next. However, the bulk of the work it was due to be awarded has taken place. So we know that the oil and gas sector peaks and troughs, goes through different investment cycles. And as we see with ADNOC in Abu Dhabi, we're also seeing with Saudi Aramco, and that's resulted in a drop in oil and gas spending this year. I think it's also fair to say that after 2 record years in the kingdom, the market is struggling to be able to deliver all these projects. There simply isn't the human capacity, the engineering, materials and supply and contracting capacity to be able to continue to deliver at such a rate. The market is still continuing to absorb the amount of work awarded, and simply really at the limit of being able to maintain this project push. And of course, as we mentioned, looking at the pause in giga project spending last year, there's a general evaluation ongoing on the cost benefits of the capital projects expenditure program, looking at how they can be revised, the timeframes, the scopes, the costs, and so on. And that is all in all tying into the lower expenditure levels seen this year. Just a reminder that at the end of this presentation, you'll be able to ask, there'll be a Q&A session, so you'll be able to ask some questions. If you do have any, please enter the questions into the Q&A box on your Zoom menu, and I'll attempt to answer them at the end of this presentation. Okay, first poll question of the day, and I want to get your views and experience on what's happening in the kingdom. The question is, have you or your company experienced a similar slowdown in project activity levels in Saudi Arabia? Yes, we've seen a slowdown. No, we have not seen any slowdown. Or 3, we haven't seen any change compared to previous years. Let's see what you are seeing in the market. Okay, very, very clear numbers coming out, very clear result emerging from this, with 450 or so responses, very good representative sample. 80% of you are saying you've seen a slowdown. So the data that we've presented today is also something that you are experiencing. 11% of you say that you haven't seen a slowdown, and 10% of you haven't seen any change on previous levels. So the vast majority of you are also saying that you have experienced or are experiencing a slowdown in activity. That could be in terms of tendering, could be in terms of RFPs being received, could be an extent of delays on your existing projects. But it's clear that the market as a whole and the stakeholders are also experiencing this slowdown. Okay, just before we move on to the next section, just a reminder about our WhatsApp channel, the MEED WhatsApp channel, looking at the projects market, or industrials as we call it, covering the Middle East and Asia. This is just a WhatsApp channel where you can join and receive the latest news and developments on the projects market. You can scan the QR code to join it. It's a one-way channel where you can only receive information, and by following it, you can also, in addition to seen the latest news from MEED and global data. There are also various polls which you can take part in, which are quite interesting because you can see exactly what your peers are thinking about the market and see whether it matches your own experience. So do join it. I'm a member, and I regularly update it with some interesting developments and news. It's well worth joining. Okay, so we've seen a big slowdown this year. So what is Saudi Arabia prioritizing over the next half decade or so up to 2030? This, in our opinion, are the sectors and projects and markets to watch, and perhaps for your business to prioritize, as we believe these are the areas where spending is going to be maintained or even increase, in our opinion. Okay. These are the priorities from our perspective. So we believe that there's going to be a more narrow focus on expenditure on project spending over the next 5 years or so, and these are as follows. We believe that a large chunk of spending is going to be on what we call the event-driven priority projects. These are sporting and other types of event which must happen by a certain date. So, for example, the Asian Football Championships in 2027, which will be hosted in Saudi Arabia, and the FIFA World Cup 2034, which has recently been awarded to the kingdom. So there's a lot of stadium and associated sports infrastructure that must be built, invested in time for these two major sporting events. So the government doesn't have a lot of choice. It must focus on these areas. Likewise, we have the Riyadh World Expo in 2030. At the end of 2030, not much work has taken place yet on the ground, so the government needs to accelerate spending on the basic infrastructure and then the above ground pavilions and other major buildings and projects there. And we know from the Dubai experience that it's no easy task building an expo from scratch. And so we're expecting to see a big acceleration in spending there in the north of Riyadh, near the King Khalid International Airport, over the next few years. There also needs to be a metro station built as well. So the official figure given by the government is about $7.3 billion for that. And certainly something to prioritize. Now, another event project is the Asian Winter Games, due to be held in Trojena in Neom in 2029. Now you'll see that there's a question mark next to that, because in recent days there has been speculation that this event will be moved to another country and will be held in Saudi Arabia at a later date. There is talk about the event moving to Korea instead. And this is due to the fact that there is speculation that Trojena and the event as a whole and the infrastructure won't be ready in time for 2029. And this ties into the delays in general that we are seeing at NEOM due to the sheer amount of work that has to be delivered in a very short amount of time, the high cost and the complexity around that. So we'll wait and see for some official notification or announcement about what's going to happen with Trojena. But if it is to happen in 2029, then there will have to be a very substantial acceleration, increase in spending at that region of NEOM. Now, another priority is Diriyah, the Diriyah Giga project on the western side of Riyadh. We've seen some major contracts awarded this year and last year, and effectively Diriyah, or a large chunk of it, is expected to be ready or open in time for the World Expo and certainly for the World Cup in 2034. So that's certainly one of the giga projects that's continuing apace, and it's a beautiful project actually. If you were to go to Western Riyadh and visit it, the boulevard there, it is certainly a very impressive project indeed and is continuing at pace. Another giga project which is continuing as normal is Roshan, building housing mainly for Saudi nationals. There are big projects in Riyadh, but also now in Jeddah and in other major cities in the kingdom. And along with affordable public housing under the National Housing Company, these are key priorities for the government. It's got a 2030 plan for the construction of hundreds of thousands of housing for local nationals to alleviate the housing shortage. And both segments of the market, both by Roshan and the National Housing Company, benefit from the fact that there was a lot of off-plan sales which help finance and kick off some of these projects. Another key area for the government, one which it can't really afford to ignore, is power and water and investment in utilities, particularly in water desalination, treatment, storage. This is a key area and seen record levels of water spending in the last 2 or 3 years. And of course, in the power segment, particularly in the renewable energy, solar PV market, Kingdom needs about 20 gigawatts a year of new solar power production capacity to reach its target by 2030. And you'll see later that just how much is being invested in these two areas. Power sector, of course, was the largest segment of spending last year, $53 billion, record number. And again, I think that just demonstrates the fact that the government is prioritizing this. Another area of, we believe, priority spending is basic infrastructure, particularly basic transport infrastructure. We've recently seen the award of the extension of Line 2 to Doria, awarded to a consortium led by WeBuild, but also comprising Larsen Toubro and NESMA. That was awarded very recently, and so work will start on that soon. We're also seeing what we expect to be very soon the release of EOIs for Q Express, which is a high-speed line linking Qiddiya to the future King Salman International Airport via Doria and various northern projects. That will be likely implemented on a PPP basis, more of which we'll talk about later. And that, again, underlines the fact that there's a focus on key transport infrastructure, particularly in and around Riyadh. Of course, a key element to serve Expo 2030 and the World Cup is the airport segment. We are seeing tendering continuing and progressing quite fast on the King Salman International Airport, the world's biggest airport. And we've seen various tenders issued for the runway, the iconic terminal, the private terminal, the royal terminal, and other basic infrastructure works there. So that's another key focus area. We're seeing a lot of investments, both by regions, by municipalities, and by the Royal Commission in Riyadh on roads and bridges. And that is, of course, also to serve some of these big projects and events that we're seeing, but also to alleviate traffic levels in the capital. And another area we're seeing is increasing use of PPP, contractual frameworks for the development, for the delivery of projects. These can allow the government to deliver projects through the private sector off balance sheet, and of course means that they don't have to commit upfront budgetary expenditure on those projects, and we're seeing that snowball. Okay, now just looking at the market this year, you can see some of the significant contracts already awarded. A lot of the biggest ones have been in the power sector and water segment, as we have already discussed. As I mentioned, the Kingdom needs about 20 gigawatts a year of new renewable energy capacity to reach its targets. And that's demonstrated by these large number of solar projects awarded, again, through the PPP framework, IPPs there, again, allowing the private sector to finance, build, and operate these projects. Also seeing big investments, also using PPP framework on the water side. And a new segment that's opening up fast is the battery energy storage solutions market, the BESS systems, which are now regularly tied to renewable energy projects as a means of providing, storing electricity and releasing that electricity at night or during cloudy conditions as a backup. And that's further increasing the attractiveness of solar PV, which now in many instances is cheaper than gas-fired power production. As I mentioned, the data on the right-hand side again underlines or reflects the focus on giga projects like Roshan and Doria, some major big contracts awarded recently. You can see the Royal Diriyah Opera House, the Arena Block, Roshan has awarded contracts on the Al Islamiyah development as well. And you can see National Housing Company. We've seen focus on data centers recently as well, you'll see there. And then on roads by the Royal Commission too. I won't go through all of these, but you'll get an idea that of where the focus is lying. And again, it reflects what we've just discussed in the previous slide around basic infrastructure, housing, and the Roshan and Diriyah giga projects. Okay, now another question for you. Regardless of your company's area of projects activity, which market segment do you believe offers the best short-term potential in Saudi Arabia? Is it the Riyadh giga projects, Diriyah, Roshan and Qiddiya? Is it basic infrastructure, roads, rail and metro? Is it a power and water market? Is it the events program, the World Cup stadiums? Is it oil and gas sector? Is it the 2030 Expo, or is it something else? Let's see what you think. So we have 850 or so people online right now. And we've got about, again, 450 responses. And the winner on this one, with about a quarter of all responses, is the Riyadh giga projects. Interesting. So actually it's now creeping up to 28% of you say that Diriyah, Roshan and Qiddiya offer the best opportunities right now in the short term. Then we have a 20% or a fifth of you saying it's the power and water segment. 15% of you say it's the basic infrastructure, roads, rail and metro. 14% of you say it's the World Cup stadiums program, associated infrastructure. 10% of you oil and gas. Expo 2030 is 10% and other just 2%. So again, I think that tends to confirm what we've been talking about, some of the major project activities and what we've seen this year as well, and the focus going forward. And that's based on 527 of you across different market segments as well. Great. All right, very interesting. Thank you very much for that. So one of those responses was the World Cup stadiums, and that here we're going to do a couple of slides on that. And both in terms of the World Cup and, of course, the 2027 Asian Football Championship, you can see that there are a number of major projects planned. One for, on one side, new stadiums, for example, the King Salman International Stadium, which is going to be where the opening match and final match is going to be played. And then also in terms of the expansion or refurbishment of existing stadiums as well. For example, King Saud University, King Abdullah Sports City Stadium, these are going to be expanded. And then one new stadium, which is under construction, is going to be also used for the 2027 Asian Championship, which is the Aramco Stadium, being built by Aramco and Roshan in Al Khobar, 46,000 seats. So that's one of the new stadiums that's going to be available for the AFC Asian Cup in 2027. The rest are going to be for the FIFA World Cup. So awards are nearing on the Roshan Stadium. The Qiddiya Stadium is, I think, recently awarded as well, as is Jeddah Central, of course, the Aramco Stadium too. There must be doubts, I think, fair doubts about the NEOM Stadium, given the uncertainty around the line right now. Of course, the NEOM Stadium was due to sit on top of one of the modules on the line. I think with doubts or uncertainty about those huge modules, there must be doubts around that NEOM Stadium. It's just a bit more of an explanation about where these stadiums are going to be located. There's one in Abha, but most of them are going to be in Jeddah and Riyadh, with one in Khobar and one in Neom as well. Now, recent development on the stadiums program is the release of solicitations of interest for the Prince Faisal bin Fahad Sports City Stadium. And interestingly, this is being done on a PPP basis through the NCP in association with the Ministry of Sports, 47,000 seat stadium. And again, I think this illustrates the emphasis now on increasing use of PPP, public-private partnerships, to deliver many of the government's future projects. PPPs work really well for the situation, given the tightness or squeeze on spending, and it also helps diversify the economy by getting the private sector more involved in project delivery and economic diversification. So first stadium of its PPP in the region. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out. But Riyadh really has been leading the way in the diversification of PPPs beyond the power and water sector to new sectors. It successfully awarded its first schools PPP a couple of years ago. Likewise, its first hospital PPP. And if you look at the NCP, it's got more than 150 PPP projects in the pipeline in many new segments and sectors, as well as the ones which the PPP has been well used, such as power and water and airports. So very interesting to see how this develops. And it'll be interesting to see as well whether other future PPP stadiums will be also delivered on this PPP basis. Now, as I mentioned just now, PPPs are growing in popularity in the kingdom, and this slide, I think, confirms that. We can see that the value of PPPs has grown substantially over the last 2 years. About $20 billion of PPPs were awarded last year, a similar number the year before, and indeed 18.3% of all contract values last year were PPPs, 23% in 2023, compared with just 10% or less in previous years. So the government really is increasing the number of PPPs going out into the market, and I think that reflects the fact that the market is increasingly comfortable with the PPP model. There's now a right balance between demand, risk, and revenue and profits, and also the fact that we have got now references for new sectors, such as I mentioned, schools, hospitals, and in the short term, roads, and as we've seen just now, the stadium program too. These numbers will increase as direct government spending falls or is being tempered, and the 150 plus PPP projects continue to grow under the NCP PPP program. And indeed, one of the forthcoming webinars that we'll be doing in due course will be with the NCP, and they'll be talking about their PPP plans. So watch this space for details on that. Now, another first-time PPP project and sector is going to be the Q Express. This is going to be, as I mentioned before, the high-speed line between the planned King Salman International Airport and then the Qiddiya Giga project. And you'll see here some of the routes. This is at the pre-SOI stage. We expect the expressions of interest documents to be issued to interested companies very soon. And this will be the first PPP rail project in the region. So there'll be a lot of eyes on this. A lot of people it'll be interesting to see how this progresses. Again, that just really reflects the fact that PPPs are now becoming the norm and becoming increasingly popular and viable for projects. I think it's really important, these 3P projects, because they allow the development of projects to be detached from overall government spending and overall macroeconomic conditions. So I think it's a very positive development to see the increasing use of this contractual framework. Now, Another key event priority project is, of course, the Riyadh World Expo in 2030. The master plan and the bid registration dossier was recently submitted to the BIE, the main Global World Expo organization. And as we know, it's due to be opened in October 2030. The master plan is revealed. You get an idea of the 5 different districts there and what it's going to look like. It's going to cover 6 million square meters and have 197 countries participating. The tenders soon will be issued for the main utilities corridor, the northern cluster, and the southern cluster of the nature corridors. And as I mentioned before, we're going to need a metro station to be built along there. You can see the metro line running there on the left-hand side. And we've also seen the project company set up, the Expo 2030 Riyadh company, ERC, as a subsidiary of the PIF. And we can be pretty sure that spending is going to be prioritized for this, given that Riyadh has no choice but to invest in this in order for it to be ready in time. So a lot of work coming up there. I think we mustn't neglect the oil and gas market. Yes, we've seen a record amount of spend over the last 2 years and a slowdown this year as Aramco's major project cycle is reaching a conclusion. But as we see here, there's still a large number of major projects to come over the next 1 to 5 years. Last year, Aramco announced it had 100 major projects or so, due to be delivered up to 2026. And we know that we have visibility on at least $40 billion of projects at the later FEED and design stages too. So still a lot of work to come in the oil and gas market, although albeit at a slightly lower level than previous years. Another sector where we is a priority in our view, which is going to maintain its current pace, is the power generation market. We see already multiple world-scale solar IPPs awarded this year. We have 2 major programs, one under the PIF in terms of direct negotiation for these IPPs, and another one through the SPPC, which is a more a competitive tendering process. We've also seen some directly awarded EPC contracts as well under the SEC. As I mentioned earlier, we're seeing some major BESS contracts awarded to be associated and built alongside the IPPs. And as I mentioned before, Saudi Arabia has a very significant target in 2030 for renewable energy capacity as a percentage of overall generation capacity, and it needs about 20 gigawatts a year of new renewable energy. Most of it, as we can see, is in solar, but we are seeing also some wind investment, and shortly we're expecting some pumped hydro storage capacity also being developed. In terms of tendering, as you can see, very significant amount of projects currently in the market, including several more solar PV IPPs, both under the SPPC and the PIF. Now, each power generation investment and projects requires also significant investment in transmission and distribution, of course, in overhead lines, substations. And the SEC last year announced it planned to spend about $126 billion of work between now and 2030. You can see some of the details on the left-hand side. And indeed, that's reflected by billions of dollars being invested in new substations, battery energy storage systems, and overhead lines ranging between 380 kilovolts and 33 kV and 132 kV as well. In terms of tendering, there's no let up there. You can see a large number of BESS systems, but also interconnections as well across the kingdom. So a large number of significant projects there as well. Water has experienced record levels of spending over the last 2 years and is going to be maintained as a priority focus. A lot of this is going to be in the on a PPP basis through the SWPC, the SWA and WETCO, but there's going to be quite a large amount of smaller EPC work as well under the National Water Company in terms of sewage treatment and water distribution systems. As you can see, large amount of spending this year already, and a large number of projects also out in the market. And then finally, in terms of other market segments, particularly in housing and in mixed use tourism, leisure projects, commercial and retail projects, there's still a large amount of activity outside the giga projects. Here you've got a list of some of the private sector and government spending on various different construction segments, including military spending in cooperation with the US Army Corps of Engineers, the new military city, the new Ministry of Defense headquarters, National Defense University, but also, as you see here, in private sector activity like MedTech City, Heart of Khobar, 3 Earth, Majid Al Futtaim, and so on, and then under NHC, affordable housing, and so on. So it's not always just about the giga projects. There are a large amount of work in other outside those, both in the private sector and direct government spending as well. My final poll question for this webinar, which is, do you believe the Saudi projects market can ever return to its 23-24 spending levels? The answers are yes, I believe the current slowdown is only temporary. 2, no, I think we have passed the peak. And 3, unsure. Let's see how optimistic or pessimistic you all are. Okay, with about 460, 470 responses, we have a dead heat. I've never seen this before. A dead heat of 40% between the optimists. I believe the current slowdown is only temporary. And the pessimists who say we think we have passed the peak. And then 20% of you, a sizable 20% of you, say you're unsure, which I think is also fair enough given the unpredictability of the market. So evenly split between those who think it's going to return to spending levels before and those who think it won't be able to. Fantastic. Okay, final slide is looking at the long-term future pipeline. I think it's also important to bear in mind that despite the slowdown, Saudi Arabia still has by far and away the largest pipeline of projects in the region, more than double the rest of the other states combined. About $1.6 trillion of known future projects in the kingdom as of this week. And that's one of the largest pipelines globally, I think only behind the US and China in terms of known future spend. So despite everything we've seen, there's still a very significant ambition and pipeline in the kingdom. Now, of that 1.59 trillion, here you can see the breakdown. Construction, which of course incorporates a lot of the giga projects, about $916 billion. Then power, nearly $200 billion. Transport infrastructure, 180. Industrial, 85, and then the other sectors. Of course, bearing in mind that visibility on future oil and gas projects is much more limited, so they tend to be a lot larger. Next up, we have UAE, $748 billion, a very large market in its own right, and then Oman, 253, Kuwait, 187, and so on. Right, just a quick question about whether you would like to know more about MEED or any of its services, whether it's MEED.com, MEED projects, our premium intelligence reports like our Saudi project report, our events like the Saudi Giga Project Summit next year, as well as our marketing solutions. So if you don't mind just answering that, and then of course we'll be more than happy to get in touch with you to discuss. Okay, thank you for that. All right, and just a final reminder about our Premium Intelligence Report, Saudi Arabia Projects Market 2025, all of the data and analysis you've seen today, plus a lot more, more than 350 pages of analysis of the projects market, going through each of the projects, the contacts, details, the various different market sectors and segments and projects. If you're interested, please scan this QR code, and you've also get a discount until the 3rd of September. So check it out, please. And final reminder about our Saudi Giga Projects 2026 event next year, June in Riyadh. We had more than 800, I think, attendees earlier this year at the Russian front in Riyadh. Fantastic event. We had most of the Giga projects giving presentations, and many other market segments as well. It's a great opportunity to network, meet some of the key decision makers, and have one-to-one meetings and workshops. So if you're interested in that, again, please scan the QR code to get more details. Definitely worth attending. And one final reminder about our WhatsApp channel: just scan this QR code, join the channel. It's easy, and you're going to benefit from large, very incisive, very useful, timely updates on projects and stories which Global Data and MEED are writing about. Okay, now time for our Q&A, where I will attempt to answer some of the questions that you have submitted. I can see we've got 33 questions here, and I will try to answer most of them. First question is about what I mentioned earlier about the potential for the Asian Winter Games to be moved. At the moment, it's unclear what's going to happen, but given the size of the work required at Trojena and the tight deadline, I wouldn't be surprised if it does get moved. Clearly, that's going to impact the Trojena project. But nonetheless, I still think it will go ahead, only at a later date. So I don't expect spending over the long run to be too impacted there. But Trojena is only a very small segment of the Saudi projects market. So I don't think it dampens the amount of opportunities or amount of work in the kingdom. Questions here about why the market has slowed down. Well, I think I've answered that question at length in this presentation. So this is being recorded. You'll be able to listen to it again when we've uploaded it to YouTube in your own time, and you also get a copy of this presentation as well. Aside from NEOM, are there any other projects where you see delays, rephasing, etc.? Well, I think there are a number of other PIF projects which may well see delays, or rather than delays, extensions of the timelines or slight rescoping. Projects may be like New Maraba, Saudi Downtown Company, Jeddah Central, Ruhr Medina. Although these are still very much active projects, it's very possible that we'll see their timeframes extended as a result of this reevaluation process. Question about the Asia Cup 2027. Well, the only new stadium for that is going to be the Aramco Stadium in Al Khobar. There were a couple of other stadiums planned to be ready or built for that, but they've been replaced by existing stadiums, one of which is the Kingdom Stadium Arena in Riyadh. So there's been slight changes in that. There will have to be some investment in training grounds and team facilities, but most of the stadiums for that are already existing. So which projects that were supposed to be awarded ended up not being awarded, therefore leading to a drop in awards? Well, I think a lot of it was around that sort of giga projects, particularly NEOM and associated work. I'm not saying that they're necessarily due to be awarded, but it's clear that there's been a lot of extensions to them while the government reevaluates. So rather than being substantially ready in terms of it by 2030, for example, with NEOM, we're now looking at 2040 and way beyond that, all the way up to potentially 2090 and beyond. And I think that's going to be a case less emphasis on 2030, and I think we're going to see a much more emphasis on 2040 going forward. The 2040 vision is going to be released soon, I imagine, and so we're really going to see a longer term spread of the work that was due to be awarded. So it's not necessarily a case that these projects are being cancelled or abandoned. It's much more a case of the ambition is still there, the vision is still there. It's just that the timeframes are going to be more realistic going forward. What's the outlook for the rest of the year? I think we're going to see more of the same. I don't expect a sudden acceleration in activity, to be honest. I think certain key market segments will continue to dominate: power and water, for example, housing and Doria and stadium work. I think we'll see an acceleration in PPP tendering as well. But I don't think we're going to see any acceleration overall. But neither do I think we're going to see a slowdown beyond what we've already seen. Is a lot of stagnation due to labor shortages? Honestly, no, I don't believe that's the case. There is still, and we've done studies on this, there are still plentiful labor, especially blue-collar labor availability to come into the kingdom to deliver. Contractors that we speak to aren't really saying that it's a labor issue. It's much more of a case of it being more of a funding issue and an engineering challenge. So I don't believe that labor is a particularly major issue that's really resulted in this slowdown. How is the tunnel construction industry performing, and does it look promising in the near future? Tunnels, whether that's associated with rail, metro, or road projects, I think, as we've seen, there is going to be a focus on basic infrastructure. So I do think there will be some big opportunities in tunnels, and also in tunneling for some of the major long distance road networks, for example, Jeddah, Asir, and but also mainly in Riyadh, and also with projects like the Line 2 extension and the Q Express. So yes, I do think there's some good opportunities in the tunnels market. What about the cash flow situation? We've seen, and that's a very good question, because we've seen a big slowdown in projects, contract awards this year. But we still, of course, have to deliver the large, massive values of work awarded in previous years. So this this $155 billion in 2024 and the $120 billion awarded in 2023, all this has to be delivered. And all this has to be delivered, and the cash flow from this will be spent over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years. So there's going to be a lot of activity in the market. It's just that in terms of new project awards, there's been a very sharp fall. But for contractors and suppliers, you're going to be looking at record activity levels and over the coming 2-3 years. So these projects all still have to be delivered for the main, and that is one silver lining, I guess, optimistic point that needs to be made. So in many ways, we haven't actually reached peak activity, whether that's in terms of contractors on the ground or in terms of supply demand for materials and equipment. What is the outlook for the water sector? Well, the water sector is a key priority for the government. As you can see in this slide, we had record levels of spending, far higher than any previous years in the water market, $15 billion last year. We've already seen $8.2 billion this year, which would have been a record in its own right before 2023. And this is going to continue. A lot of it, of course, is in the PPP market through the SWPC, WETCO, the Saudi Irrigation Organization, SWA as well, and of course in NWC on the wastewater treatment and distribution side. So water alongside power is a key priority, and certainly something to look at if you're not already. In your priority list, you don't mention Qiddiya or New Maraba. These are ramping up and construction is happening. What is your position on these projects? Well, we haven't seen very significant contract awards in the last 6 months, 7, 8 months in Qiddiya or New Murabba. It's true, of course, that Qiddiya is of course in the midst of delivering billions of dollars of work awarded in previous years, and is working towards opening certainly before 2030. It's a very interesting and exciting project indeed, and no doubt will be very successful. New Murabba, of course, the piling works and groundworks have largely been delivered now, and work is or tendering is underway for the raft works, and then after that the Mokab itself, above ground construction, but we haven't quite reached that point yet, and I think it remains to be seen whether, under this current evaluation, whether New Murabba is going to happen as a priority, or whether it's going to take a bit longer than originally planned. But a fascinating and iconic project indeed. Do you expect to see a sharp rise in tenders in Q4 2025 with projects like King Salman Airport, the Mokab, the new stadiums, and the line all coming online? I'm not sure we're going to see a big increase compared in project awards compared with previous years. Certainly, there are some major tenders out for King Salman International Airport, and also on the stadium side, and we'll see some big tendering. But I think this year we're going to see a fairly muted level of spending. We've seen $51 billion this year, and I think with 4 months to go, max we'll see about $100 billion overall. Now, compared with 2021, 2022, and previous years, this will be way higher than the decade average. I guess maybe we're being a bit unfair comparing this year with 2023 and 2024 numbers, but certainly there is a slowdown. But I think compared to the last 2 years, yes, we're not going to see quite the same levels. Whether that remains the case in 2026 or not, in 2027, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, we've got a number of questions about New Murabba. Do we think that's going to be our priority or progress? Well, there's a number of you are suggesting that it will be, but let's wait and see, and see how that develops. But certainly, we are going to see in the short term some road diversions and other basic works required to service the construction of the Mokab. But let's wait and see. Question mark about data centers. Data centers is definitely a very hot topic right now. Big spending on data centers across the region. We know that the GCC wants to become a leader in AI development, and to do that, it needs to have its large homegrown data center capacity to serve that. So Saudi Arabia and the UAE are leading the way there. Cheap electricity, of course, helps very much. And if you look at the value of work awarded, or the major projects awarded this year, you'll see that data centers comprise a fair chunk of that. Why is NEOM the only project falling behind schedule when we compare it to other giga projects in Saudi Arabia? Well, the simple reason really is the scale of NEOMs. Now, I mean, each module, the first 3 modules, each module is at least going to require $50 billion to build, and simply put, big questions have to be asked before committing that very significant amount. And so NEOM really is just a victim of its sheer size that is really resulted in why it's slowed down more than anything else. On the other hand, when you look at Roshan, for example, with off-plan sales, revenue generation, with Qiddiya, which has a big commercial rationale, validity, and Diriyah, which has also already been very successful, you can see why the kingdom is focusing on these comparatively smaller giga projects than to the massive and a little bit more longer term NEOM project. What is your current visibility on the Saudi Land Bridge project? Land Bridge is, of course, the railway between Riyadh and Jeddah for both passengers and freight. This has been in the pipeline for more than a decade now, and the indications are that it's still a big priority for the government. We know that transport, railways in particular, are something the government is looking at very seriously. But the land bridge has been in the pipeline for so long now, it is very difficult to say, oh, yes, this is definitely going to go ahead this year or next year. We just have to wait and see there, I think. Question about the Abha Airport PPP. What is the latest bid submission date? That is moving. I don't have a date off the top of my head, but that is moving. And that's just one of those big PPP projects which are in the market right now. And one of the major themes you'll have taken away from this presentation is the focus on PPP projects. Like I said, more than 150 being planned by the NCP, and that if you're not already involved in PPP market, either as a contractor or as a developer, now is the time to really get involved, because we're going to see as a proportion of overall project spending, PPP just become more and more important and more prevalent. So really something to look at. Okay, an interesting question here, an important question, and one I haven't touched on, is what the impact of the Saudi real estate market opening up to foreign investors is going to be, and which areas are going to be opened up as freehold to foreign investors. So we may have seen that Saudi Arabia has relaxed some of the rules about foreign individuals or companies owning property in Saudi Arabia in certain areas, initially under leasehold and then potentially down the line as freehold, and within certain areas around Riyadh and potentially Jeddah, not in Mecca or Medina. And we know from experience looking at Dubai in 2001, when it opened up certain areas of the Emirate to international buyers, and followed soon after by Abu Dhabi, we know that that resulted in a major boom in real estate spending, a boom really that has never stopped other than in 2009, 2010. And I expect a similar boom in Saudi Arabia. I've said before that Saudi Arabia real estate market could be like Dubai, but on steroids. It's a much larger market. There's a huge global interest in investing in the kingdom. And as I think as the regulations get tightened and clarity on areas to build, to invest in, become clearer, I think that is going to be a very substantial area of activity over the next 2 to 5 years. And again, that is going to really boost the construction market in the kingdom. Just looking at the questions. Got a question here about Seven, which is the Saudi Entertainment Ventures, now part of Qiddiya. So a lot of contracts already awarded for entertainment centers around under 7 around the kingdom. So those are under construction, a much smaller size than some of the other giga projects. So much easier to develop and finance and build. Most of them are now being awarded, and you can see them under construction in the kingdom. Some of them will be opening fairly soon. And again, the commercial rationale, investment rationale for those is much more straightforward. So I think where there is clear investment case, or it's clear that the revenues will be generated for, quite easily from some of these giga projects, I think those are the ones which are more likely to go ahead. And I expect to see more of the 7 projects to be awarded over the next 18 months. So another question about Trojana Winter Games, another one about Saudi Land Bridge and the Muqab New Murabba, which I think I've already answered. Question, is NEOM doomed? That's the question everyone is asking these days. I don't think it's doomed. I just think it's being reevaluated and extended, shall we say. I think the intention now is still to deliver NEOM, but over a much longer period of time. Gosh, a lot of questions about New Murabba and Muqab and the status, which I think I've answered. It's clear that a lot of you think it's it's going to go to market soon, and it offers a big short-term opportunity. Let's wait and see. And I'm also acutely aware that we're running over time, and so I'll only have time to answer a few more questions. I've got more than 90 questions, which I'll try and run through. Do you have a list of contractors awarded for airport projects or others? So lists of every single tender over $10 million, the bidders, the contractors, the scope, and everything like that. It can be found on our projects tracking service, meedprojects.com. All the data that you see, or most of the data you see here, for example, on these graphs and charts, is sourced from MEED projects data. It's all bottom-up data built on thousands of individual projects. So if you want the granular data about each project, then please visit meedprojects.com and consider subscribing to that. How true is some of the media's articles or stories that Western consultants have a big role to play in the current situation in terms of the slowdown? Well, that's a very contentious question. I think obviously some of these big giga projects, and in particular, have been very dependent on program managers, project managers, engineering firms from around the world, but particularly from Europe and the US. I don't think it's fair to say that you can pinpoint the blame for some of the delays on them. I think, you know, when you look at something like NEOM, the scale of the ambition was huge, and the investment required was huge. Was there an underestimation of the sheer cost and challenge and of the delivery of those projects? Probably, but I don't think you can say it came from one party or the other. So I think it may be a bit unfair to blame the Western consultants. At the end of the day, they're contracted to deliver, or you know, what the government is or PIF is planning. So you know, of course, in any situation like this, there's going to be a blame game, fingers pointing, but I don't think you can pinpoint any one company, segment of the market, consultants, contractors, or clients as being the cause for this. Are there any other projects that may come up in ABHA? Well, you may have seen a presentation, a webinar done a month or two ago with Suda Development, which is developing the Suda Peaks project in the Asir province, not far from ABHA. And yes, there is a big emphasis now by the government on attracting investment and building tourism investments and commercial developments in the more remoter regions or more peripheral regions of Saudi Arabia. So ASEA definitely targets for that. We've also seen recently some of the PIF subsidiaries launch projects along the Gulf Coast, for example, Gulf Coast Real Estate Development Company, the Project Line project in the divided zone. We've also seen Desert Resorts Development Company launch a project in Sheba, and I expect we'll see more projects under the PIF launch in and around the Eastern Province and other parts of the kingdom. So yes, I do think there's opportunities in places like ASEA and ABHA. Okay, so question here. PIF recently released its 2024 annual report, and there was some critical analysis about the fact that its growth in 2024 was largely down to asset transfers rather than investment wins. How do you forecast PIF's performance in 2025, particularly in a mid-$60 per barrel world? Well, I think you probably know more than that than me. I think it's a bit outside my scope of expertise and this webinar about how the PIF is going to perform. But clearly, you know, the performance of the giga projects, or lower spending there, or some of the amounts that's already spent on these giga projects is going to weigh down on its performance. I think the oil price is holding up a bit better than we may have feared a couple of months ago. So we'll just have to wait and see for its next annual report release to see how it's performed. A question about Jeddah. We know that we've seen many parts of the city being demolished as part of development. A lot of it is around Jeddah Central Giga project under the PIF, but also there's Al Balad development company as well in Jeddah Uptown. I expect having demolished some of these sort of more rundown areas, we will over time see their redevelopment. Jeddah is of course a focus for development by the government. Of course, recently there's been a lot more focus on Riyadh, and Jeddah Central development itself is slowing down a little, but I do expect over the long-term ambition for Jeddah to be realised, and maybe just not in the short term, or maybe at the original time frame that we expected. Someone's writing, I'm managing a factory in Riyadh and payment from contractors is slowing down a lot. It affects our cash flow. Well, whenever you do see a downturn like this or a slowdown, of course, there is also a slowdown in contractor payments. The clients take longer to pay contractors. And of course, when that happens, contractors take longer to pay their suppliers. And it's a cycle we see fairly regularly in the region. It's very difficult to break that cycle, and this is just an unfortunate consequence of the slowdown in the market that we have seen. So I don't have it's difficult to see right now if that's going to improve rapidly, but clearly we want to see that resolved sooner rather than later. We've seen an extensive delay with Ruwa Medina Giga project development. Any insights about them? Well, I think, again, just as we've seen with other Giga PIF subsidiary developments and other Giga project developments like Al Ula, like Ruwa Medina, Jeddah Central, Saudi Downtown Company, these are all caught up within the sort of general financing challenges that the government has and in the re-evaluation of its projects program. So there's no one, you can't really pinpoint one Giga project or major project program that is more affected than others. Maybe NEOM you can point to, but there is a general slowdown taking place, and that affects all of these big Giga project programs, Ruwa Medina included. The hope, the expectation may be that the market, once the government has prioritized or completed its evaluation process, the government will once again renew the pace of it, or accelerate spending on projects. But we just don't know at this stage. It might be that some of these projects are downsized. There might be a rescoping. They might be delivered in a different way. Maybe more emphasis on PPP. It's just not clear at this stage. Do you expect to see an increase in oil and gas sector spending? Are we going to see more Aramco spending over the next couple of years? I think there's going to be a bigger increase, a bigger focus on downstream investments in refining, modernization projects, in the oil to chemicals program, if that goes ahead, and a continuing focus on offshore developments as well. I'm not sure if we're going to see this big investment in upstream oil and gas production capacity like we've done over the last couple of years. I do think the focus is going to change a little bit. But Aramco is a very secure, consistent developer of projects, tenderer of projects, and over the last 30-40 years, it's been a very reliable client in terms of continuing to tender work, and in terms of its capital expenditure, as well as in terms of operations and maintenance and other expenditure lines. So I'm not very worried about the oil and gas sector, but we do see cycles, up and down cycles, and at the moment we're sort of reaching a sort of down cycle. But over the next couple of years, we know that's going to ramp up again. Question about NEOM Stadium, what's going to happen to that? Well, I alluded to that earlier. I think if the line faces many more delays, then it's really difficult to see how the NEOM Stadium can proceed as planned. But there are plenty of other stadiums in the pipeline in the kingdom. We know from Qatar's experience that not all of the stadiums announced in the bid dossier or the entry for the World Cup necessarily always go ahead. There are more than enough stadiums, both existing and planned under construction in the kingdom, to make up for potentially the loss of the NEOM Stadium. But at this stage, it doesn't seem that would be able to go ahead. Okay, I'll take one more question because we're well over time. It's great to see so many questions and to see so many of you still on the call, more than 500 of you still listening. Question here about the oxygen desalination plant. Is it awarded or to be awarded soon? And I think the questions around Magna, Sindala, Oxagon, these are all associated with these all are impacted by association with NEOM's problems and the lines problems, and they're all caught up, I think, in that, fairly or unfairly. And I think it's a reasonable assumption to view investments like the desalination plant at Oxagon and other projects across the different regions to also be impacted by the general evaluation of NEOM. So I wouldn't be surprised, I'm not saying it will be, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are some delays on that. Right, one more question. Status of the line project. Well, the line, I think, is very difficult right now. We know that the line has been reduced in the short term to 3 modules. But even if you just imagine a module is 800 meters long, 200 meters wide, and 500 meters high, I mean, that is absolutely enormous. It might not sound like it, but you try and visualize that. I mean, it's absolutely enormous. It's like taking a 2x1 kilometer area of Manhattan and folding it up. I mean, you're just talking such an enormous project. At the very least, $50 billion per module. And when you're looking at $150 billion, it's just really difficult to push ahead with something like that, at least in the short term. So it's very difficult to foresee a situation where approval is given for the line to start construction, just purely due to the sheer cost, but also engineering challenge. So let's wait and see. We would all hope that such an iconic project, such a visionary project proceeds, but it is difficult right now to see that happening in the short term. Right. Okay, so that's it from me right now. I will be back next month with a webinar on the water projects market in the MENA region. And as I may have mentioned, we've got some other exciting webinars coming up towards the end of the year. We've got a webinar later in September with the NCP, the PPP body in Saudi Arabia, which I hope you can all tune into. I'll be looking at the Saudi giga projects market in particular in November, and then we'll be looking having a webinar with the SWPC, the water desalination storage transmission client in Saudi Arabia at the end of the year in December. So lots of interesting webinars to come up. And but for now, thank you very much for attending today. This presentation has been recorded. It'll be uploaded on YouTube in the next couple of days, and you'll get notification of that. And most of you should have received by now, if you've registered for this, you should have received this presentation in your inboxes as well. So for me, that's it for now. Thank you very much for paying attention. I hope you found it valuable and for your questions, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you very much and goodbye.